One second, Owen Wallace was balancing a tray of champagne flutes at the edge of the ballroom, and the next, he was catching a stranger in his arms mid-fall, her heel having snapped clean off as she stepped backward. "Whoa, I got you," he said instinctively, steadying her before the glasses on his tray could crash to the floor. The woman blinked up at him, dazed. Her dark hair had tumbled over one shoulder and her dress shimmered under the chandelier's light. "That could have been embarrassing," she muttered, cheeks flushing. "You okay?" Owen asked, glancing down at her broken heel. His grip on her waist was firm but gentle. She nodded, brushing a hand across her face. "Yeah, just my pride and—" "Probably that shoe." He let out a breath of relief and helped her upright. "Glad I was standing here then. You almost face-planted into a senator," she laughed, the sound soft and surprised. "Well, thank you for the save, mystery man." Owen gave a crooked smile. "Owen, I'm working the gala. Just helping out tonight." "I'm Juliet," she replied, glancing down briefly at her ruined heel. "And I'm not exactly dressed for walking barefoot." Without thinking, Owen crouched slightly. "Hop on, I'll carry you to a chair," she blinked. "Seriously? I caught you once already." With a half-laugh, she climbed onto his back, and he carried her across the marble floor, past curious stares and murmurs. Juliet buried her face near his neck to avoid the looks, but Owen didn't care. He just knew she smelled like vanilla and something expensive. He set her down gently near a potted palm in a quieter corner of the ballroom. "Thanks," she said as she slipped off the ruined shoe. "You didn't have to do that," he shrugged. "You looked like you needed it." She tilted her head, eyes studying him. "You don't talk like the rest of the people in this room." Owen chuckled. "Probably because I don't belong here." Juliet's eyes narrowed. "You're not a waiter." "No," he admitted. "I fix things, plumbing, wiring. I was hired last minute to help out because they were short-staffed, needed the cash." She nodded slowly, intrigued. "You always carry women around at charity galas, only the ones who fall into my arms," he said, grinning. Juliet laughed again, and it hit him how beautiful she really was, effortless, like she didn't even know it. That moment was interrupted by a buzz in her clutch. She glanced at it, then sighed. "I should get back to my table." "Right," Owen said, stepping back. "Be careful. Maybe stick to chairs for the rest of the night." She hesitated, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. "Thank you, Owen." He watched her disappear into the crowd, not realizing he'd been holding his breath. 2 hours later, Owen was back home in his cramped 2-bedroom apartment, peeling off his dress shirt and checking on the monitor in the living room. His 6-year-old son, Carter, was fast asleep in the next room, the babysitter reading in the armchair nearby. "How was he?" Owen asked softly. "Good as gold," the sitter replied. "Didn't even ask for a second story tonight." Owen smiled tiredly and handed her the cash he'd been paid for the night. "Thanks again." After she left, he sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Juliet, he'd never met someone like her. And he definitely wouldn't see her again. Juliet Langston stepped into the back of her black car, kicking off the one remaining heel. "You okay, Miss Langston?" her chauffeur asked. "Yes, Mark, just clumsy tonight." She opened her phone and scrolled through the dozens of unanswered messages from board members and assistants, then paused. Owen, she hadn't told him her last name for once. It felt nice. To just be Juliet, not the CEO of Langston and Hayes. Not the woman who just closed a 9-figure merger. Just a woman who fell into a stranger's arms, and she couldn't stop thinking about him, the way he didn't flinch at her dress or her confidence, the way he carried her like it meant nothing, like she meant something. She hadn't felt that in years. A week passed. Owen fixed a busted pipe in a downtown cafe, picked up Carter from school, and tried not to think about Juliet Langston every time he saw a woman in heels. Carter sat across from him at their small kitchen table, chomping on a grilled cheese. "Dad?" "Yeah, bud. Why don't we have a big house like Liam at school? His has stairs." Owen swallowed hard. "Because it's just me and you, and we've got everything we need here, right?" Carter nodded slowly, then grinned. "Can we get a dog?" Owen laughed. "Let's see how we do with a goldfish first." The next night, Owen was fixing a blown fuse at a downtown office building when he heard footsteps behind him. "You again." He turned, nearly dropping his screwdriver. Juliet stood there in a navy dress and heels, both shoes fully intact, and a look on her face like she'd meant to find him. "You work here?" he asked, stunned. I own this building, she said softly. He blinked. Come again. I'm Juliet Langston, CEO of Langston and Hayes. Owen stood slowly, wiping his hands on his jeans. So, when you said you weren't dressed for walking barefoot, I meant it, she interrupted with a smile, but I also didn't want you to treat me differently. I wouldn't have, he said honestly. She looked around the electrical room, then back at him. You're hard to find, Owen Wallace. Why were you looking? Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, she said, and I figured, if I was willing to fall once, maybe I should try again. On purpose this time. Owen stared at her for a long moment. I'm a single dad, he said, voice low. I don't have money, I fix things for a living. My life's not shiny. I'm not looking for shiny, Juliet whispered. I'm looking for real, he swallowed hard. You sure you're not just feeling sorry for me? She stepped closer. Do I look like a woman who does anything she doesn't want to? Owen couldn't help the grin that tugged at his mouth. No, he said. You don't. You free tomorrow night? She asked. Depends. What's the occasion? I want to buy you dinner. Real dinner. No kids' menus, no plastic cups. He raised an eyebrow. You sure you want to be seen with a guy who wears flannel and fixes toilets? Juliet leaned in, her voice a whisper. Only if he catches me every time I fall. He stared at her for a second longer, then nodded. Yeah, I'm free. And just like that, everything started to change. Owen stood in front of the mirror in the borrowed blazer, adjusting the collar for the third time. It didn't quite fit across his shoulders, but it was the best option his neighbor had in his closet, and Owen wasn't about to show up to dinner with Juliet in his usual work jacket. Carter sat on the couch behind him, drawing superheroes in a spiral notebook, his tongue poking out in concentration. You look like one of those guys in the movies, Carter said without glancing up. Which ones? Owen asked, turning from the mirror. The ones who save people before the big explosion. Owen let out a quiet laugh. Let's hope dinner's less dramatic than that. He checked the time. The babysitter was due any minute, and Juliet had arranged the reservation herself, giving him only a time and an address, no details, no clues. He didn't have a driver's license, so she said she'd send a car. Of course she would. The doorbell rang, and Carter jumped up to answer it before Owen could stop him. The sitter stepped in with a warm smile, and Owen gave her quick instructions before grabbing his wallet and stepping outside. The car waiting for him wasn't just a car, it was sleek, black, and so polished he could see his reflection in the door. The driver opened it without a word, and Owen slid in, his stomach tightening. The restaurant was tucked into the corner of a quiet street, the kind of place without a sign, just a tall door and a single lantern burning above it. Inside, the lighting was soft and golden, the tables spaced far apart, and the waitstaff moved like they were floating. Juliet was already seated when he arrived, wearing a tailored navy blouse and trousers, her hair swept back to reveal delicate earrings that caught the light every time she moved. She looked up from the wine list, and something in her expression softened when she saw him. You clean up well, she said as he approached. I feel like an imposter, he admitted, sliding into the chair across from her. Good, that means you're aware of the stakes, he raised an eyebrow. What stakes? She handed him a menu without answering. You'll see. He scanned the menu and immediately regretted it. No prices, ingredients he couldn't pronounce. I'm more of a burger guy, he said after a moment. There's a lamb tartare, that's kind of like a burger, just raw, he blinked. I don't think I've ever eaten anything that didn't require ketchup. Juliet laughed, setting the menu aside. Then you're in for an experience. A waiter appeared like he'd been summoned telepathically, and Juliet ordered for both of them without hesitation. Owen didn't protest. He figured if he was already in over his head, he might as well stop pretending he knew how to swim. You didn't tell me you had a son, she said once the waiter disappeared. He paused, unsure. Didn't think it had come up. I think about the people I let into my life, especially now, she said. So what's he like? Owen leaned back slightly, relaxing into the question. He's obsessed with comics. He thinks I'm secretly a superhero because I climb ladders and fix things. Sounds like someone with good instincts or wild imagination. He hesitated. His mom left when he was 2. Couldn't handle the mess life turned into after her modeling gigs dried up. Juliet didn't flinch. That must have been hard. It was worse for him, but we've figured it out. She watched him for a long moment. I grew up in a house where no one ever talked about anything real. It always felt like we were performing for each other. And now, he asked, I run a company full of people pretending they're never scared. She picked up her wine glass and twirled it slightly. Sometimes I think the only reason I stayed in this city is because I'm afraid of what silence might teach me. Owen nodded slowly. You don't seem afraid. I've just learned how to keep moving fast enough so it doesn't catch me. Their food arrived delicate portions arranged like art. Owen picked at his plate, unsure whether he was supposed to eat it or admire it. You ever think about leaving it all? He asked. Every morning, she said. And by lunch, I'm back in a boardroom convincing people I know what I'm doing. He studied her for a long beat. Why me, Juliet? You could be anywhere with anyone. She didn't look away. Because I don't feel like I'm performing with you, and I don't want to go through life without knowing what that could become. He sat back, letting that land. I've got a kid. I've got a small life. I don't take vacations. I don't do brunch. I don't care. You should. I've spent half my life building something that never made me feel the way I did when you carried me across that ballroom. Owen exhaled, gripping the edge of the table. I want to believe this is real. Then let's find out. After dinner, she didn't let the car drop him off at home. Instead, she asked the driver to take them through the hills, past city lights that glittered like stars trapped in glass. They sat in comfortable silence, the night stretching open between them like a secret. Let me take you somewhere, she said suddenly. It's late, he replied. Trust me. She gave the driver a new address, and 20 minutes later they pulled up to a private gate. Beyond it, a narrow road curved through tall hedges until they reached a modern house made of glass and stone, perched on the edge of a cliff. It's a place I go when I want to remember why I started, she said, unlocking the door. No one else comes here. He stepped inside and the city seemed to disappear. The house was quiet, open, with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling. A single grand piano sat in the corner, untouched. Juliet walked to the edge of the terrace and leaned on the railing, the wind catching her hair. I bought this before the company turned profitable, she said. I thought success would feel different. Owen moved beside her. What did you expect it to feel like? Like peace. And does it? She turned to him. No, but you do. He stared at her, unsure of what to say. Then slowly he reached for her hand, her fingers closed around his, and neither of them spoke again for a long time. When he finally left, the city was quiet and dark, and for the first time in years, Owen felt like he wasn't just surviving. He was beginning to live. Juliet leaned on the edge of the long conference table, her fingers drumming softly on the glossy wood as she stared out the wall of windows. Rain streaked down the glass, and the distant hum of city traffic buzzed beneath her office. She hadn't spoken to Owen in 3 days, not out of avoidance, but because she hadn't stopped thinking about him long enough to trust her voice. Her assistant knocked lightly on the doorframe. The London partners are on the line. Should I patch them in? Juliet didn't turn. No, tell them I'll call back tomorrow. A pause. They've already rescheduled twice, I know. After the door closed, Juliet pulled her phone from her pocket. She didn't dial. She just stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over his name, her heart thudding in a way it hadn't since the early days of boardroom battles and hostile acquisitions. She was in trouble. Real trouble, and not the kind that could be solved with a check. Owen stood on the sidelines of Carter's Little League practice, his boots caked in wet grass, his shoulders hunched against the drizzle. Parents clapped from beneath umbrellas, but he barely registered the game. His mind hadn't left that glass house since the night Juliet brought him there. He hadn't expected to feel anything, not at this stage of his life, not with someone like her, but she'd cracked something open, something he couldn't patch with duct tape or hide behind Carter's bedtime routine. You look like you're watching a funeral, said a voice beside him. Owen turned to see his sister, Ellie, shielding herself with a comically large raincoat. Haven't seen you this quiet since you tried to fix Mom's toaster with a pocket knife. I'm fine, Ellie squinted at him. No, you're not, you've got that look. The one you had when Carter's mom took off, he exhaled through his nose. It's not the same. No, she said. This one's worse, you look like you actually care. Owen didn't answer. He watched Carter miss a catch, then chase after the ball with sheer determination. Ellie nudged him. So, who is she? She's not someone I should be falling for. That's not an answer. She's the kind of woman who has drivers and houses that overlook cities and wine that costs more than my truck. Ellie let out a low whistle. So she's rich. She's more than that. She's powerful, smart. People move when she speaks, and you fix things. Yeah, Ellie folded her arms. You think she's ashamed of you? No, I think I'm scared of how much I want her. Juliet sat across from her father in the private dining room of the Langston Club. The waiters had already cleared the appetizers, and the main course sat untouched between them. You've been distracted, he said, slicing his steak with precision. That doesn't happen to you. People are allowed off days. Not in our world, he replied. Not when shareholders are watching. You've been ducking calls, delaying meetings, and don't think I haven't heard about the canceled trip to Zurich. She pushed her plate aside. I'm not discussing strategy over filet mignon. I'm not talking about strategy, I'm talking about legacy. Juliet tilted her head. Is this the part where you remind me that you built this empire from the ground up? No, he said. This is the part where I tell you one wrong decision could bring it down. And what decision would that be? He looked at her over the rim of his glass. Your personal life is not personal when your name is on the building. You've always known that. Juliet's jaw tightened. I'm not a teenager sneaking out of the house. No, you're a CEO being seen with a man who doesn't belong in our world. He belongs in mine. Her father set his fork down. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking for the first time in years. He has nothing to offer you. He has everything I've been missing. The silence between them stretched, brittle and dangerous. I'm not going to let you destroy everything we've built because you're chasing love, she interrupted. Is that what you're afraid of? He stared at her, the lines around his mouth deepening. I'm afraid of you forgetting what it took to get here. Juliet stood, tossing her linen napkin onto the table. Then maybe it's time I remember why I started climbing in the first place. Owen opened the door to find Juliet on his porch, soaked from the rain, her coat clinging to her arms, hair dripping onto her shoulders. He stepped back instinctively, letting her inside without a word. I didn't know where else to go, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You could have called. I wasn't sure you'd answer. He crossed his arms. And now Juliet looked up at him, eyes glassy. I don't care what anyone thinks. I don't care if it makes sense. I just know that when I'm not around you, everything feels too quiet. Owen stared at her, his chest tight. You think I don't feel the same. You think I sleep at night without replaying every word you've said to me. Then why haven't you called? Because I don't know how to fit into your world. Juliet stepped closer. Then let's build a new one. He searched her face, the rain between them thickening against the windows. I don't have anything to give you, he said, voice raw. No private jets, no stock options, just a kid who thinks I'm a superhero and a life full of scraped knuckles and overdue bills. Juliet reached for his hand. I don't need a superhero, I just need you. He didn't pull away. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. Tell me you don't feel it too, she whispered, his grip tightened on her fingers. I feel it. The door creaked open behind them and Carter peeked out from the hallway, rubbing his eyes. Dad, Owen turned. Hey, bud. Couldn't sleep, Carter's eyes darted to Juliet. Is she staying? Owen looked at Juliet, then back to his son. If she wants to, he said quietly. Carter nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world, then padded back to bed. Juliet let out a shaky breath. That okay? Owen looked at her, and for the first time he let himself believe this could be real. It's more than okay. She smiled, and he kissed her firm, certain, and full of everything he'd been afraid to feel, and this time neither of them pulled away. Juliet stood frozen in the entryway of Owen's apartment the next morning, sunlight filtering through the slats of the blinds, painting soft lines across the floor. Carter was at the table, legs swinging as he carefully stacked jelly on his toast. Owen poured coffee beside her, his hand brushing hers, slow and familiar. I've got to head to a job in an hour, he said. Pipe burst at a bakery on 12th. Ellie's coming by to hang with Carter. Juliet nodded, watching Carter lick jam from his fingers, his curls bouncing as he hummed to himself. You sure you don't mind me being here? She asked quietly. Owen leaned against the counter, his gaze steady. If I did, you wouldn't be. She stepped into the kitchen, picking up a clean mug. I've never spent the night somewhere that didn't have a doorman. He raised an eyebrow. We've got Mrs. Hargrove across the hall. She's nosier than any doorman. Security through surveillance, Juliet remarked, pouring herself coffee. Owen grinned. Exactly. Carter looked up. Can she come to the comic shop with us this weekend, if she wants to? Owen said, glancing at Juliet. They're doing a superhero costume contest. Juliet's brows lifted. Costumes? Carter nodded seriously. I'm going as the Night Phantom. Dad said he'd be the Rust Wrench. Juliet laughed. What would that make me? Carter thought for a moment. You could be Lady Velocity. She's fast. And she controls lightning. I like the sound of that, she said, smiling. Owen's phone buzzed and he grabbed his tool bag from the floor. Ellie should be here in 10. You good? Juliet poured juice for Carter and ruffled his hair. We're good. He paused at the door. I'll be back by lunch. She watched him leave, the door clicking softly behind him. Carter looked up from his plate. You don't talk like the other grown-ups. Juliet sat beside him. Is that good or bad? Good, he said confidently. You don't use your phone when someone's talking, she smiled. That's a pretty low bar. It's still important. When Ellie arrived, Juliet stepped into the hallway to give them space. She pulled her phone from her purse and hesitated. Then she dialed. Juliet Langston, came the voice on the other end. You've been avoiding me. I've been thinking, she said. I need to make some changes. There was a pause. You're not stepping down, don't even say it. I'm restructuring. Effective immediately, I'll be moving our headquarters downtown. Closer to where most of our workforce commutes from. You're serious. I'm also increasing our community initiatives. We're going to start funding trade programs for underprivileged youth. Construction, electrical, plumbing, the works. Another pause. This isn't about the company. No, she said. It's about me. I've spent years building something that reflects who I was. I think it's time it reflected who I am. She hung up before the response came. By the time Owen returned, Carter was dressed as the Night Phantom, complete with a black towel tied around his neck and a paper mask drawn with marker. He's been practicing his superhero poses all morning, Ellie said as she grabbed her coat. You've got a real vigilante on your hands. Owen handed her a coffee from the corner bodega. Thanks for watching him. Ellie looked from Owen to Juliet. You're still here, Juliet smiled. I'm not done yet. Ellie leaned in. Good. He's happier when you are. That weekend, the comic shop buzzed with laughter, plastic swords, and the rustling of capes. Carter darted between displays, pulling Juliet toward the action figure aisle while Owen kept one eye on the register. Dad, come look. They have the new Night Phantom gloves. Owen joined them, crouching beside Carter. Those are cool. But they're not in the budget today, bud. Carter's face fell, but he nodded quickly. It's okay, I got my costume. Juliet knelt beside him. How much are they? 35, Owen said before Carter could speak, and he already has gloves. Juliet stood and walked to the counter. She returned a moment later and knelt again. They were having a superhero sale, she said, handing Carter a small bag. Lady Velocity's treat. Carter's jaw dropped. Are you serious? She nodded. But only if you promise to use your powers for good. He threw his arms around her before she could blink. You're the coolest grown-up ever. Owen watched them, his throat tightening. Back at the apartment, Carter played with his new gloves on the floor, completely absorbed in imaginary battle. Juliet sat beside Owen on the couch, their legs touching. You didn't have to do that, he said. I wanted to. He turned to her. You're not scared of this. Of how different our lives are. I've never been more sure of anything. He hesitated. You know I can't give you the world. She leaned into him. You already gave me everything I didn't know I needed. He wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. You're not going to wake up one day and miss champagne boardrooms and yacht parties, she laughed softly. I've had all the noise. I want quiet now, and meaning, and a boy who calls me Lady Velocity. He kissed the top of her head. You're not going to get tired of me fixing sinks and showing up with calloused hands. I've never liked anyone more. There was a knock at the door. Owen stood and opened it to find a courier holding a slim envelope. For Mr. Wallace, the man said. Owen opened it slowly, reading the letter inside, his brow furrowed. What is it? Juliet asked. He handed it to her. It was an official invitation from the Langston and Hayes Foundation, requesting Owen's presence at their upcoming benefit gala. He was listed as a guest of honor. And beneath the letterhead in Juliet's handwriting were 5 words: "No tray this time. Dance floor." 2 weeks later, Owen stepped into the grand hall in a tailored navy suit Juliet had picked out herself. Carter walked beside him in a miniature tuxedo, eyes wide at the chandeliers and velvet drapes. Juliet stood near the stage, radiant in a sleek silver gown. Her hair swept up, eyes locked on him the moment he entered. As he reached her, she took his hand without a word and led him to the center of the room. The music shifted, people turned, cameras flashed, but Owen only saw her. "This is different," he said, his hand settling on her waist. "You're not carrying champagne," she teased. "But you still caught me." The music swelled and they moved together, slow and certain, the rest of the world blurring around them. "I love you," she whispered into his neck. He held her tighter. "I love you too." Carter clapped from the edge of the dance floor, shouting, "Go, Lady Velocity." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Juliet looked up at Owen with tears in her eyes. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" He nodded. "Better than okay." And as they danced beneath the glittering lights, surrounded by a world that no longer felt too big or too divided, they knew they'd found something rare, not perfect, but real, and forever. Juliet adjusted the lapel of Owen's suit jacket as they stepped off the elevator into the penthouse-level lobby of the Langston and Hayes downtown headquarters. The building hummed with quiet energy, floors gleaming, the scent of leather and citrus polish in the air. The headquarters had officially relocated 2 days prior, a decision Juliet had finalized without ceremony. But today, she wasn't here for a meeting. She was here with Owen to sign the partnership agreement for the Community Trades Initiative. And it was the first time Owen had seen his name engraved on anything that wasn't a toolbox. "They didn't have to name it after me," he murmured as they reached the glass doors etched with "The Wallace Initiative, hands that build futures." Juliet looked up at him. "They didn't." "I did." He opened the door for her, and they stepped into the modern conference space where a half-dozen people waited. The foundation's legal team, 2 school administrators, a young woman from the city's Job Corps, and Juliet's lead project manager, who handed Owen a thick folder. He flipped through it, brow furrowed. "This all looks official." "Because it is," Juliet said. "We're launching with 3 schools, vocational scholarships, hands-on internships, job placement support. And once it grows, we'll expand to other cities. I've never had my name on anything but overdue utility bills. Now it's on the future." The project manager slid a sleek pen toward him. Owen stared at it for a second, then signed. When the meeting ended, they walked out onto the rooftop garden. Juliet took off her heels and carried them in one hand, stepping barefoot across the stone path between the wild rosemary and lavender. "There's something I haven't told you," she said, voice light but intentional. Owen leaned on the railing, watching the skyline. "That sounds dangerous. I bought the comic shop." He turned slowly. "You what?" she shrugged. "It was going under. The owner couldn't keep up with the rent after the last landlord hiked it, so I bought the building. Leased it back to him for $1 a year." He blinked. "You bought a comic shop." "I figured Carter needed a place to grow his collection, and you needed somewhere to find him when he's older and pretending he doesn't need you." He laughed, low and surprised. "You're something else, Langston." Juliet reached into her bag and pulled out a folded envelope. "One more surprise." Owen took it, unfolded it, and stared. "It's a deed," he said slowly, "to a house. Not just any house, it's the one you always slow down to look at on Jefferson. The one with the porch swing and the giant tree in the front yard." He looked up. "How did you even know that?" "Ellie told me." "I can't let you buy me a house." "It's not just for you," she said. "It's for Carter, and for me. I want a home, Owen, not a penthouse. A real one." He set the paper down on the ledge and stepped into her space, his hands warm on her waist. "You're serious," he said. "I've never been more serious in my life." He kissed her slow and deep, one hand sliding to cradle the back of her neck. The city disappeared beneath them. "I always thought love was supposed to feel like falling," he whispered against her lips. "But this feels like flying." That night they brought Carter to see the house. The porch swing creaked under his weight as he pushed himself back and forth, the tree branches casting long shadows in the moonlight. "Can we really live here?" Carter asked, wide-eyed. Juliet nodded. If you want to. Do we get to paint our rooms? Owen ruffled his hair. Any color you want, kiddo. Then I want mine space blue with stars. Juliet leaned her head on Owen's shoulder. I want ours white with windows that open in the morning. He kissed her hair. Done. The next few weeks unfolded like something out of someone else's life. They moved in slowly, room by room. Carter picked out glow-in-the-dark constellations for his ceiling. Juliet planted herbs in the kitchen windowsill. Owen installed shelves in the garage and fixed the back gate that didn't quite latch. One evening, as Juliet unpacked a box of old photo frames, she found a small velvet box tucked beneath them. She turned, holding it up. What's this? Owen looked up from where he was assembling Carter's new dresser. Open it. Inside sat a delicate gold ring with a single sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't large, but it was perfect. Juliet's breath caught. Owen. He stood, brushing sawdust from his hands. I know we already have everything, but I want to give you this too. Not because you need it, but because I need you. She blinked fast, her heart thudding. You're really going to ask me right here, in a room with a half-built dresser and laundry on the floor? Yeah, he said, because this is where our life happens. He took her hand and knelt. Juliet Langston, will you marry me in this messy, beautiful, real life we're building? She didn't hesitate. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Carter peeked in from the hallway. Does this mean we're all superheroes now? Owen grinned. Better. We're a team. They married on the porch of their new home, with wildflowers in Juliet's hair and Carter holding the rings. The guests were a mix of foundation partners, comic shop regulars, and neighborhood kids who'd adopted Owen as their unofficial big brother. There was no orchestra. Just an old speaker playing a playlist Carter made himself. Owen wore a suit Juliet had tailored for him, and she wore a dress with pockets. They danced barefoot under string lights, the air full of laughter and grilled food and the clinking of lemonade glasses. When Juliet whispered, "I love you," into Owen's ear that night, he didn't say it back right away. He just held her tighter, kissed her temple, and whispered, "Forever." Carter fell asleep in a lawn chair, his superhero cape tangled around his legs. And beneath the stars, with their hands entwined and the sound of wind in the trees, Juliet and Owen knew. They hadn't just found love, they'd built it.